Today, we're going to be talking about sales and how they really impact your contribution margin and how much you're actually spending behind the scenes to make those sales happen. Um, I think it's really important to understand how sales affect your revenue, your profit, and the ways that they manifest themselves that you might not be aware of. So, as we get started, my name is John May. I am the marketing engagement manager here for Webgility. I've been here for about 5 years, and I've been in e-commerce for a lot longer than that. Again, these ecom clinic sessions are essentially just a way for you to fill the gaps in your data and sort of pressure test your processes as an e-commerce business. So, why are we talking about sales? I think it's very easy to look at sales in sort of a one-dimensional way and say, my revenue's up during a sale month, I'm making money, right? And the truth is that those aren't the same thing, right? Your revenue being up doesn't immediately mean that you're going to have more cash or more, net profit, right? So, most people will be able to answer the first sort of part of that sentence, which is my revenue's up, right? Being able to understand if it actually makes you money is a lot more complicated of conversation because, as always, the things that we talk about here are generally the behind the scenes fees and expenses that go into stuff like that, and how it impacts your bottom line. So just a quick pause here. These sessions, at least for the foreseeable future, are going to be based on our 100 questions. Sort of, I don't know what we're calling it. It's we have a landing page that goes through 100 questions that e-commerce businesses ask themselves when it comes to their data and their financial paper trail. So I'm going to post that in the chat. I feel like it's a really good resource. Even if you're 100% rock solid on your data and you feel like you have all the questions or all the answers to those questions, it's good to poke around and see, there's always this air of like, I don't know what I don't know, especially in business because there's so many different things happening, so many different hats that everybody's wearing that it's impossible to really know everything. But I feel like these 100 questions are a really good introduction to, being able to ask yourself the questions that you didn't know to ask before and find out where to obtain those answers essentially. So I pasted it on the chat. Feel free to check it out anytime. Really good resource. But yeah, so these sessions are going to be based on those 100 questions. We're pulling from them. This is question number 80 from that list. So in the next 30 minutes, we'll talk about the question itself. So the one thing that your P&L should tell you but doesn't, which is, did the sale actually make money? Did the sale that I do, whether it's 20%, 40%, 50% off, did it actually make me money? And there's some other caveats that I want to explore with that question as well, like if it didn't make me money, is it still worth doing, right? But we'll walk through this sort of scenario line by line and understand exactly how sales impact the bottom line, and then we'll end with the Q&A. If we get to the end and you guys don't have any questions, you don't feel like being chatty, that is totally fine. I'm happy to give you guys time back in your day. I've been getting a lot better at finishing within that 30-minute time frame, so happy about that. But if we could start with just sort of an engagement beat here. If you guys did run a discount recently, when did you last run your discount? If you want to drop that in chat, be cool to know the last time that you guys ran a discount. And if you, I mean, if you know that it was profitable for you, or if you have a question about that, feel free to drop that in chat as well. But this is where we switch over to the handy dandy whiteboard. And as usual, I've done a little bit of work to set the whiteboard up and make it a little easier to flow in the 30-minute time frame. It's a lot better to have some things built out so you don't have to watch me fumble over getting things set up. But today we're gonna just start with it doesn't matter what the SKU is. I mean, we'll start with the price of $100. We'll just say it's like a nice pair of wireless earbuds, right? Doesn't really matter what the product is because at the end of the day, we're not talking about what the actual SKU is. It's more how pricing affects and discounts affect the cost of goods sold, the margin, and at the end of the day, the contribution, right? So, the product that we're starting with today is priced at $100, and it costs $60 to acquire and to sell. So that puts the margin at 40%, which is about $40 per unit. Pretty easy. This is pretty cut and dry, easy to understand unit economics, right? And you sell about 100 a month of these. So very easy, very approachable, I guess, as an example. So my question to you would be to keep in mind as we go through this would be what your hero product's real margin. So what's your best product? What's the margin, the actual contribution margin and the margin behind it? Because that will help you understand how this breaks down going forward. So let's talk about the sale. The sale that you're running is 20% off. You're taking it down from $100 to $80. The COGS is still $60. But the profit per unit here goes down considerably, right? So while the sale is only 20% off for the customer, your COGS is still staying the same. You're not getting a discount from your supplier, or all the things that contribute to your cost of goods sold. That's not getting discounted. So you're still paying $60 per unit to make sure that that unit ships and sells. So that for you, the profit is cut in half. So you're down 50% on your end rather than the 20% that the customer is seeing. So easy way of thinking about this is the discount plus the margin is the profit that you're giving up on every single sale, right? And again, this is pretty straightforward unit economics. I wanted to use nice, easy, round numbers to make it super easy to understand. But you can use this same, it's not even an equation. It's just understanding how that COGS affects the price that's actually being listed on the website and in the discount, right? So this is what gets forgotten. So the things that you want to consider when, you know, starting to think about running a sale or looking back at sales, and how, efficient they were or how profitable they were for you. These are the things to keep in mind. So you have, oh, okay, this text box is really small. Let's make that bigger. So you have fees, and they're about 12% of every sale. And that's a general number. It's going to be different depending on everybody's situation. But in this example, 12%, it's a pretty general average number. So you have 12% fees on every single sale. And you've got your ad spend. And we'll use, again, another sort of general number here, 1500. Drive it. And discount hits all units, even the ones you'd sell. So what this means is when you're applying a discount, it's easy to think of it as like when the discount's successful, when a sale goes through and you're running a discount, it's all attributed to the discount, right? It's very easy to think that because you want the sale to be successful. You want to, pull that lever and see orders flood in. And you might see an increase of, 20, 30, 40%, in your month over month, order numbers. But what you're not considering is that you probably would have already sold again from that increase, that 20, 30, 40%. You still would have sold the original number that you were planning on selling, that you're at your average orders that you're selling each month would have already sold, but they're now discounted on those orders as well. So rather than, eating just the cost on the units that are supplementary in this sale, you're also discounting the stuff that would have sold regardless, which might not seem like a big deal on the surface, but it does, again, contribute to this overall margin, that contribution margin, when it comes to, at the end of the day, what the sale costs you to run. So the question here would be, what did your last promo cost you to run? Not necessarily like what do your units cost up front, what's the total cost? It's all of this stuff together. Your fees. I don't know why this is. There we go. Now it's lined up. All the fees, all of the ad spend, and all of the additional units discounted, adds up to be quite a bit of money for most people, I would say. So what does it look like when you actually reconcile it, right? So on a normal month, again, super simple economics. We're looking at 100 units. Your revenue is generally $10,000, which means your contribution from those units is $2,800. Pretty easy, right? And what you're seeing here is essentially, I don't know if anybody was here for last week's session where we talked about Amazon settlements, but what you're seeing here is sort of the same situation, right? You see the bank deposit come through, you see income, $2,800, you see that revenue, and you're like, sweet, this is good. Revenue is, most people look at revenue and they say, this is exactly what I want. It's an easy conversation. And it's sort of a fluffy number that makes you feel good, right? But what you actually want to consider is the costs associated with that revenue, right? So in the 20% off that you ran in this example, the units you sold, you were up 60%, right? That's awesome. You sold 60 more units than you would have in a normal month. Your revenue went up by $2,800, like we're seeing here, the contribution, which is a 28% increase. And the contribution is much lower, right? So if you're considering the fees, the ad spend, and the discounts, your contribution is a lot more realistic, obviously, because you're getting the real number. And it's telling you a lot more of a story here than what this $2,800 is in your normal months, right? So you're getting the indication that, okay, I'm still making a little bit of money. I'm up in units, I'm up in revenue, but it's not as much as I thought. It's not as high of an increase in profit as I thought. It's actually lower profit than what I thought. And this is where you should sort of take a pause and say, okay, does this sale make sense for my business? And it could, right? So this is one of those caveats that I wanted to sort of expand on at the beginning of the session, where this is not to tell you that you should not run sales. This is absolutely not a cautionary tale to say, sales are going to lose you money. Don't do it. Stay strong with your pricing and don't ever, offer discounts. Not at all what I'm saying. This is essentially to say, look at what it's going to cost you. If you have the cash flow to spare, it's still probably a good idea. And even if you don't, it's worth considering that the reach that you're getting, that 60% increase in units sold, is increase in reach, increase in exposure. If you're selling on Amazon, there's the added benefit of maybe your higher competitive standing, and getting something like the buy box or higher ranking in the marketplace. But all this is to say is that you should be able to look at this number, this contribution, and say, okay, does this make sense for my business right now? And again, that's the whole point of these sessions, is to make you stop and think and know, rather than a gut check, rather than saying like, I think this works, being able to point to a number and say, okay, well, if at the end of the day, this is the number that I'm looking at for my return, does it still make sense for me to do this? And that'll give you your answer, right? So let me get a nice big text here. The takeaway here is your books showed revenue up. Let's make this smaller. And a fat deposit, right? So you showed a fat deposit in your income in your bank, and that makes you think, things are going great. But it never showed the $164 or $65. Um, so what actually does show this number is the fully reconciled deposit. So that's just to kind of recap and sort of, I guess, boil it down. That $2,800 that you started with came down to $165, which is, again, 60% more units, 28% more revenue, but $2,600-ish less profit. So that's the big takeaway here. And I'm actually just gonna make this 2,636 less profit. I'll make it big, bold, and red. So that's the ultimate takeaway here. Okay. And so what we want to talk about here is the rules. So these are essentially equations or questions that you should ask yourself, things that you should be aware of before you run discounts. So the first thing is, I'm going to have to make this longer again. Discount, ooh, not caps. Discount divided by margin equals profit you give up. And that's uh or added, sorry, discount plus margin, not divided by, equals the profit you give up. And that's the equation I included up here. The second is going to be break even units equal discount plus margin minus discount. So this is this third point here. So the discount hits all the units, it shows you what your break even is. And the third is margin. And I can't do a greater than or equal to, so we'll say greater, or it'd be greater than or equal to discount is every unit you loses money. And I should say less than or equal to. Okay, so this is all to say that there is an equation called the margin floor that I'll explain. The margin floor is essentially the lowest discount or the highest discount that you can make while still having a positive margin for yourself, right? So that's I would say the probably the most important I guess piece of information for you is that if you wanted to still run sales and you wanted to maintain a profit, you need to know what the highest sale that you can offer is before you start to eat into your margins too much. So there's two ways of looking at this, and I'm going to post them in chat and put them here. So if you're using the uh, price cost, like your cost of goods sold, you can use your COGS. And that's going to be max discount equals 1 minus your COGS divided by your price multiplied by 1 minus the fees. So plug in your numbers here to understand what the max discount is. I'm going to just expand this because that's frustrating. There we go. You can also do it not using your COGS if you wanted to just use your margin. So I'm going to make it a little longer. Similar equation, right? So here your max discount equals 1 minus 1 minus the margin divided by 1 minus the fees. Super easy. So this will tell you, based on your own products, your own fees, your own margins, what your max sale discount is before you start to eat into your margins. Again, there might be a reality where you decide to run a sale, even though your margin's going to be lower and sort of, again, eat into your profits a little more. Um, an example of this is for something like Prime Day, right? If you feel that it's worth it for your business to increase the exposure and bring in new faces, new buyers, and play the long game where you're getting people in the door with discounts, creating a customer life cycle for them where they come back and they repeat buy, then it could be worth it to lose money. But at the very basic level, you should understand what your maximum discount that you can apply is that will still keep you margins in the end and keep you money. Right. So the last thing here is, and I kind of explained this, but I wanted to uncover it, right? So your book showed the revenue going up plus that fat deposit that we talked about, but they never showed the 165. I typed 165. There we go. And what this all points back to is that reconciled order level numbers are what you need at the end of the day, right? So you can, do this math in your head. You can wait till the end of the month and run this, max discount equation every single month to understand what your discounts should be. But ultimately, the point that I try to make on every one of these sessions is that the goal is to have a workflow, a system, a framework in place so that all of your data feeds into a centralized resource, generally QuickBooks, and has an organization naturally built into it so that you can make these decisions on the fly, right? So if you don't know what your fees are, if you don't know what your margin is, if you don't know what your cost of goods sold is, off the top of your head, it's going to be a lot harder to come up with that information on the fly, right? So if you go into a shareholder meeting and they're asking you, like, what are your plans to increase month over month revenue? And you don't have this information on hand, it's going to feel a lot more like a gut decision. It's going to feel like you're flying blind. Whereas if you have the framework that, again, Webgility does this, so it's really easy for me to talk to this. But if you have something that pulls in your orders from Amazon, pulls in the settlement reports, your payouts from Shopify, pulls in all the payment processing fees, everything that comes with selling online, and then you have integrations that pull in maybe your ad spend as well on Amazon. I mean, Amazon already has ad spend integrations built in, but the point is to pull in all that auxiliary expense and order level data, pull it into QuickBooks alongside what you're paying for your cost of goods sold. So like your shipping and fulfillment, warehouse fees, stuff like that should all exist in one place alongside each other so that you can run reports and make those decisions super easily. This is sort of a piece of that ecosystem, whereas again, Webgility, our job here is to sort of point you in the direction to be able to make these decisions easier. Um, so, what I wanted to do is hop back over to the slide deck and talk about things to take home from here. I talked a little bit about the toolkit for this week, and the toolkit is a discount calculator. So I always like to include some sort of calculator or template that uses either Google Sheets or an Excel spreadsheet where you can just plug in your numbers and it'll do the math for you. Super easy. You can use it every single month if you want, or just try it out. But either way, it's a really good resource for you to just kind of play around with your numbers and understand what your discount should be, right? I always include an AI prompt. I know maybe not everybody's a huge fan of AI, but at the end of the day, it's something that we can use to make our lives a little easier. You don't have to put in your real data if you don't want. I know that's kind of a concern for some people, but you can use this AI prompt to run analysis on your products, your SKUs, your data, and give you, real actionable insights going forward. So it's there if you'd like it. And then I also have a resource list that includes, additional curated links and discussions from other reputable people in the industry. So if you wanted to read more on discounts and, leveraging your product list to maximize those discounts, then that is there for you as well. Those will get emailed with the recording to this session, the slide deck, the whiteboard, all the stuff that I include every single week. And then the one thing that I sort of wanted to leave with, super airy, not super heavy, before we do any Q&A, if anybody does have any questions. Again, the end point for these sessions is to say that the math that we talk about on these sessions, the data that we talk about on these sessions is only as good as the numbers that you plug into it, right? So your books might show revenue and deposit, but they don't show what the sale actually costs, the fees, the ad spend, the margin you gave away, and those reconciled order number or order level numbers that we talked about. That's what really matters. I know we might have some Webgility customers on here, so this might not necessarily apply to you. But if you aren't a Webgility customer, you can talk to our team and we'll kind of show you in action what an ideal situation looks like for pulling this order data. Super easy, doesn't take very long, and you can see exactly what that looks like at the end of the day. Even if you are a Webgility customer, we've sort of at Webgility kind of been trying to reframe the ecosystem or the conversation behind what order level sync is, or typically we've been referred to as like an e-commerce connector. And we're sort of moving in a direction that's beyond that. Ultimately, what we want to create and the environment and community that we want to create is one where you understand all the data that feeds into your business and understand how to leverage that data to make better business decisions. So, off my soapbox, and this is where we will do the dedicated Q&A. If nobody has any questions, again, I know I mentioned we can end the session early. I am not opposed to giving you guys 4 minutes back in your day. My goal for these sessions is to be not necessarily bite-sized, but you can attend on your lunch, have it on the background. I would appreciate if people talked in these, but I understand that it's easier to listen sometimes. So we'll leave it open for a couple questions here. If anybody does have any, again, happy to answer any questions, even not related to sales. If it's something just e-commerce related, I'm happy to answer those as well. Um, I guess I just to like it's from the sort of you don't know what you don't know frame. I know we talked about the 100 questions. I prepared a couple questions for myself because if you don't know what question to ask, you don't ask it, right? So um, I know we talked about the scenario where discounts might win you additional customers, right? You might bring in new exposure, new eyes to the platform, which might make a discount worth it, right? So sometimes a discount is worth it to win a new customer. And that's a good thing, right? So that is, I would agree if you have two numbers, right? So if you know what the customer costs to acquire with the discount, and how often they come back, that is two numbers that you should know before, just saying, it's going to bring me more eyes. It's going to bring me more customers. So leading to next week, we're going to be talking about CAC, cost to acquire customer, and exactly how that affects your margins as well. So if you're interested in understanding exactly what customers cost to acquire, I would attend next week. But yeah, that's probably the first big question is if you do want to look at, discounts from a purely promotional exposure reach standpoint, understand what it costs to acquire each customer after that discount's applied, and then how often customers do come back. So understand, do like studies of your own data and how often customers return, how often they buy, what their average order value is, stuff like that will help you make that decision a lot easier. Another sort of scenario, and this will be, I can end the session after this one. This will be the last question. You might maybe want to clear out dead stock. That's another reason that people do run discounts, right? Is clearing dead stock or freeing up cash, especially for dead stock, right? And that is totally valid, right? So it's a cash and a storage decision at the end of the day. That's something that is not necessarily tied to profit. So rather than looking at it from a profitable standpoint, you're looking at it from a cost standpoint, right? And understanding how much cash you have available, and how much it's costing you to store those goods. So that is a valid way to look at it. Clearing stock at like a near zero margin can beat paying to store it. But again, try to understand what the margin is on those at the end of the day, the contribution margin after the discount, after all the fees have hit, and understand if it actually, recoups you a little bit of that cost. The danger there is running a cash clearing sale while believing that you're making profit off of it. So that's the only thing that I would consider. But yeah, we are at time. I can go ahead and end the session for today. I appreciate everybody joining. I do these every single week on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. If you check the landing page that is sent out to you every single week, I'm gonna have the new one up tomorrow, so you'll be able to register for next week. You can always, if you don't want to have to get emailed and reminded and sign up every week manually, you can click the little checkbox in the form that says sign me up for all future sessions and you'll automatically be added. I just send you a reminder email to tell you what the session is for that week. But again, appreciate you guys joining. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your week and a great day. Thanks, guys.